I think the formula for success, I genuinely believe, is to chase our passion more than our pension.
Wow. Jamil Qureshi, psychologist, performance coach, golfers extraordinaire, 6 world number ones he's helped create.
One of my favourite golfers to work with is Thomas Bjorn, the Danish golfer, mainly because it was so hard. He's a lovely guy. My wife used to adore him. I used to say it's because you don't work with him. So I think that it's a universal law in high performance at the moment. The blame looks backwards, responsibility looks forwards.
Jamil Qureshi, he's going to give you the strategies today of what you and I can do to increase performance of ourselves and our teams right now. So, Jamil, your thoughts or your definition of what is success?
I've got 2 definitions for success, actually. So it depends when you ask me and in what context.
Yeah.
So the first is, I think success is about making the connection between 2 things previously unconnected. That's where success comes from for me. So I've seen this in business and in sport.
Yeah.
Where people make a connection between 2 things which was previously unconnected. So you might want to think about some of the great innovations, of recent times in regard to successful businesses, but also in sport too, where people...
Who was the fastest to get that with you? Like, was it a business person, a sports person?
I don't really know, to be honest. I think sometimes successful people do this naturally anyway, so they don't necessarily see it as a technique. It's something that they just do. So I think business people realize it better than sports people, because in business we do talk about strategic alliances, partnerships and networks and how we can move outside of current thinking. So I think that, sports people tend to practice harder, and have a level of curiosity and inquiry about how they may do things. So I think that, for my first definition I'm going to give you is about make the connection between 2 things previously unconnected. And I think that's increasingly important as a definition in business. When we've got a marketing problem, who do we go to? We go to marketing. A HR problem, who do we go to? Go to HR. These are the people who gave you the problem in the first place. So we increasingly need to think like an outsider.
Yeah.
The immigrant will always see things that the citizen is blind to. Let's move outside of current.
Well, I think it's why coaching works.
There you go. I totally agree with you. It's a very perfect example, isn't it? Because we help people make connections that they couldn't necessarily make on their own. Now, as a coach, you're a connector, aren't you? So, and then the second definition I'll give you success is the continued accomplishment of goals, which is personal to the individual. And the reason why I say
like the word continued.
Yeah, and I think the reason why I say continued is that it isn't a destination. It's the continued accomplishment of goals personal to the individual. It's that journey. And I say personal to the individual because the problem that I find with success is that people always try to define it as a comparison. So we compare ourselves to our next door neighbor. We compare ourselves to someone we went to school with. Someone who's our height and build and in the same team, or someone on the sales floor. But it's fulfilling our own potential. Not measuring ourselves against others. And that's why it's personal to the individual.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because if I look at, let's use golf as an example because you've worked with a lot of golfers. It's easy to compare yourself with another player who's similar style, similar nature. But I've some of the best golfers I've noticed, and you know this better than me, but they go out there with a mindset of a certain score, not a certain player or a certain whatever. Where do you see that distinction? Because you've broken through a lot of guys and a lot of players in golf. What's that distinction for you?
Yeah, I think so. I think playing sport well, or being a good leader actually is the same. That it's not seeking to impress; it's seeking to express. Be ourselves in the context of our work, whether you're an MD or whether you're a golfer. And I find that the best sports people are themselves in the context of their work. So they express themselves fully on a football pitch or express themselves fully on a golf tournament. So when you play, I don't know if you do play golf, Brad, do you?
I've played golf for a lot of years. Well, I've practiced golf for a lot of years.
So when you play great, it's not good form or a lucky streak or a purple patch. It's how you can play all the time. The majority of the time we're compromised. The majority of the time, whether you're a salesman or a golfer, the majority of the time we're compromised But when we do it really well, it's how we can do it. So it's almost the interference that's getting in the way. And that might be because you're comparing yourself to someone else. It might be because your thoughts are, in a place which is not conducive to you completing upon tasks.
Yeah.
So we almost need to be, expressing ourselves fully. We need to be playing any sport or being in business in the way in which we can as individuals, making the most of our own talent.
So what would you say is your formula for success, or what are the ingredients to success?
Well, if I knew that. If I knew that, I'd be as successful as you.
Yeah. Well, but it's everyone has a theory on it. That's why I love to dive into what people's theories.
You've asked me a huge question now, so I don't know how to answer it. It's a really big one, isn't it? I think the formula for success, I genuinely believe is to chase our passion more than our pension. I have such an interest in psychology. I'm happy to talk to you all day about psychology. And I used to do business and marketing. So I used to play cricket, I used to do business and marketing. And things felt like a chore. I didn't want to do my job. I didn't want to do what I was doing. And then one day I made a decision that, what am I interested in? And I thought psychology. It's the only thing I used to talk about, the only thing I read about, anything that interested me. And things sort of did that for me career-wise because, I started to realize that, my vocation become my vacation.
Yeah.
I've spoken for, 1,500 lovely people today, courtesy of you. Thank you very much. And I've really enjoyed it, and I think that nothing can be achieved. And I'm sure that you think this as well, in your business, that nothing can be achieved without enthusiasm and enjoyment. And no doubt, you get up today still looking forward to developing your business and your people. And I think it's, when you lose that, there was a golf psychologist called Joss, who unfortunately is no longer with us. And he said that when he used to get up in the morning, and he'd been doing golf psychology for a long time, he'd go to the bathroom. And I said, if he wasn't whistling when he was in the bathroom, he said that he knew it was the time to give up his job. So there he was, having a wee and whistling. And he said that if I was just whistling in the bathroom first thing in the morning, I'm happy to start this day and be part of it. And the day that I stopped whistling is the day that, I know now.
Got to move on to something else.
Yeah.
So, speaking of golf, any favorite people that you've coached in that, or anyone that got it real quick?
Yeah. Golf is the hardest one. Yeah, golf is the hardest one. There's loads of favourites, but interestingly, I think getting someone from number 3 in the world to number 1 in the world is easy. So because of raw talent,
it's already there.
So they're great. My favourite people to work with have been people who are 500th in the world and losing their card. And then you get them to sort of 300th, 200th, and they manage to get their kids through school, put a bit of money in the bank, and then lose their careers having, created a safety blanket for themselves.
Yeah.
And so, I think taking something from good to great, can be quite easy. Getting from something which isn't working to,
okay to do it is a lot harder.
And I think that, so I've had a lot of pleasure from that. One of my favourite golfers to work with is Thomas Bjorn, the Danish golfer.
Yeah.
Mainly because it was so hard. So
he just didn't catch it as quick.
He's a lovely guy. And I love Thomas very, very much. My wife used to adore him, and I used to say it's because you don't work with him. And he shall I have got time for a quick story?
Yeah.
Thomas, have I? So first time I ever worked with Thomas, this will, as a coach, I'd like your thoughts on it. But so first time I ever worked with Thomas was the USPGA. Never worked with him before. And he said, walk the practice round with me. So I walked the practice round with him, the USPGA. He was practicing with Phil Mickelson, Patrick Harrington, and I can't remember who else. Paul McGinley, I think. And so it's 2 days before the tournament, and he's hitting it sideways. Dreadful. I literally can't hit it. No, he's effing and blinding. And he threw his water bottle at Ken, his caddy, twice. Ken ducked, went over his head. And then he turns around to me and turns around to Ken. I hadn't even spoken to him at this stage. But turns around to Ken and says, "You're rubbish." And looks at me, "You're rubbish." "No, I'm rubbish." They said, "I'm going to feign injury. My knee's hurting. I'm going to say I'm out of here. I'm not going to embarrass myself on the world stage. So you need to get your flight home. You're getting your flight home. I'm out." And so then, he stomps off like a bear with a sore head down the fairway to find the ball, which has gone wherever. And I said to Ken, and Ken had worked with him for 2 years. I said to Ken, "So what do you do? And Ken smiled and then whispered to me. He said, "Nothing. It's got 66 written all over it." and this great score. Don't worry about it. And then Thomas goes out, birdies the first 5 holes of the US PGA, loses on the last hole to Phil Mickelson, finishes second, turns around to me and says, "Same time next week." No thanks. No, I did it for another 2 years. But isn't it incredible that he goes from being like that, and that's obviously his preparation. So I think that one of the reasons I say Thomas is one of my favourite people is because it was so unfathomable.
Yeah, I remember one of my kids' friends played the PGA Tour, and the dad. And there was a time when he was just not making the cuts. And he sat with me at Christmas time, and I said, "Well, what's your goal each week?" And he said, "My goal's to make the cut." And I said, "Dude, that's the dumbest goal ever. Your goal's to win."
Yeah, dreadful. That's
making the cut is a byproduct of your goal. It just happens automatically. And I think that's a big thing. What's your thoughts on the relationship between success and failure?
I always think that failure is part payment towards success. It's a really important point, this, actually. And I think that sports people get this better than business people, I'm afraid to say. So the price of success is always paid in full and in advance. So you don't get to number one in the world, and start making mistakes. You run a successful business from day one. It doesn't work like that. So the price of success is always paid in full and in advance. So I think the best sports people and business people, can fail. It doesn't make them a failure. Or they can make mistakes. Doesn't make them a mistake. And by detaching the action from the person gives us our best learning opportunity. So success and failure, shouldn't become attitudes, mindsets. They should just become outcomes, both of which give us an equal opportunity to learn.
Who was the hardest worker and paid that price really well first? Sports people, because the F1 guys have to pay it in advance.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they do. I think that, it's a tricky one to think about a sport where, do you know what? I think golf is a good one. I think there was a time when, Phil Mickelson was second in the world. And he played 38 tournaments or whatever, and he'd won 3. So, if you're second in the world, but you're losing the vast majority. When Tiger Woods was, the best golfer that's ever lived, he was winning less than half the tournaments he played.
Yeah.
So therefore, he was losing 1 out of 2.
Golf and tennis are the two hardest ones in that you lose the majority of tournaments that you enter. You might win in tennis more matches, but you still lose ultimately.
Right. Yeah, and you can liken this, can't you, to a sales environment?
Yeah.
That, where, you can lose 9 times, 9 pitches, 9 phone calls, and you win big on the 10th. And to not fall into the pattern of believing today's a bad day, I'm not doing things right, this isn't working for me, and to believe in the uniqueness of each event. And, again, I'll give you a golfing tip, get your handicap down a turn, Brad. But, I think that some of the best golfers I work with have a uniqueness of the event. And what I mean by that is that, you can toss a coin, heads or tails, and it comes up tails 9 times in a row. It's obviously still 50-50 on the 10th occasion on whether it's heads or tails. There's no patterns. The patterns exist in our head in that sense. So the best golfers will stand on the first tee and hit it sideways, stand on the second tee and hit it sideways, stand on the third tee and think this could be the best tee shot I've played because it's unique, it's different, So, so believing in the uniqueness of each event and the possibilities, not the probability, the possibility is a really interesting space to be in. Being open-minded.
Yeah. I had a great golfer once say, I get 7 bad shots around. I don't know when they're going to come. And when I get one, I go, 6 left.
Yeah.
And that was his philosophy.
Yeah.
Cricket, I want to bring up cricket just for a second, because Mark Waugh used to say his ability to concentrate for 10 seconds at a time, days on end, was sort of his biggest skill. How does someone learn that skill, or is that because when you work with the Ashes guys, with the playing us Aussies, and thank you for working with them and helping them beat the Australians? Not really. How does that differ from working with a golfer, or is it the same?
Well, do you know what? I mean, I wouldn't say there's a similarity necessarily sport-wise, and I wouldn't say there's a similarity person-wise, to be honest, in regard to, I tend to work with individuals or units. So, whether you're a golfer or a cricketer, you may have a different need. So someone might need to focus more. So, I need to focus a little bit less, too intense, and, over-motivated, or someone just needs to sort out their goals, what they're trying to achieve and how they're trying to achieve it. So whether you use a business or whether you use golf or cricket as your vehicle, tend to work with the individual or the unit or the team, not necessarily the sport, as it were. So I'd say there's a difference in when I was doing this bit with some of the cricketers, it was based upon decision making, how to make the best decisions. So how do we make decisions? How do we make the best decision? Because often in sport, be it football, cricket, golf, there's a one bit where a defining moment which creates momentum, and it's usually, I think it was Jeff Boycott, so when you think you're doing well as a team, add 2 wickets to the score. And it's 2 bad decisions potentially. So how do we make better decisions? Shot selection, bowling changes, what we choose to.
Well, how do we make better decisions?
I think that one thing I'll give to you on this is that is to understand our decision making process. That's how we make better decisions. So many of us will decide whether we've made a good decision based upon the outcome. So we make a business decision and we think, oh, it's good. Well, that was bad. But we only know the outcome retrospectively. So it's actually not a good way to know whether we're making good decisions, because you can make a good decision and have a bad outcome, or you can make a bad decision and have a good outcome. I've worked with leadership teams who have confused luck for genius. What a great decision. So, thankfully, the competition screwed up and the market went right. So I think that the only thing that we have got is the intrinsic quality of our decision-making process. And I don't think enough people think about how they think. So how do we make decisions? What input did I have? What bias or prejudice? What did I omit? Who would have thought differently? And what evidence would they have used to think differently or to make a different decision? So I think that once we start to deconstruct a little bit, we'll never give ourselves the best chance of winning. We'll never guarantee winning, but we can give ourselves the best chance.
Blame and responsibility, backwards, forwards. Take me through that thinking, because I think it's really important.
Yes, so I think that it's a universal law in high performance at the moment. The blame looks backwards, responsibility looks forwards. We can blame anyone and everyone for non-performance. We can blame compliance, governance, regulation, new technologies, health and safety,
AI,
pricing, a whole lot. I think the most successful people that I work with have genuine accountability, real ownership. So, the best footballers, when they're 15 or 16, they're practicing on a Friday night when their friends are getting drunk. They're practicing on a Saturday morning when their friends are having a lie-in. And that's ownership, and accountability. So, I think it's very easy at the moment to be blindsided by complexity, uncertainty, improbability, all the things that, we're living with in the world at the moment. So
I think the key is to take responsibility and ownership for driving the best outcomes and best opportunities, no matter what our circumstance. And that's the matter of...
How does one get out of blame, though? If you've traditionally done that, how do you move yourself?
Yeah, I think, again, good news and bad news for you. The good news is it can be done. I mean, the bad news is it's not easy. We get into thinking patterns, don't we? It's mental models, habitual thinking. And I think that, maybe a series of questions that you stick on a Post-it, in your office or, by the side of the bed. So what could I have done differently? How could I have changed this? And make it more introspective about our role in things. The worst thing that, I hear, in business and in sport is, if it wasn't for them, if it wasn't like, it's just like, that's some way in which they do it around here, or often you hear it about, this isn't my idea, it's actually come from head office, and,
well, that brings, how do you shift the whole team to responsibility then?
Yeah, and I think that we all have a sphere of influence, every single one of us. So some larger than others, but it's a matter of being with people, who can understand, coach, cascade, tell stories, about the things which are important, and so therefore hopefully inspire and motivate others to do the same. So, I think if you're in a large organization, for example, it may not be possible to make significant cultural change across, geographies, and thousands of people. But we've got a sphere of influence. There are some people who we engage with who we can inspire, motivate, provoke and stimulate. And I think that it's our responsibility to do that. And if we are taking responsibility to do that, there is always a reaction to an action. So we're giving ourselves the best opportunity.
You once said, as a coach, it's not about, telling them where to look. It's about asking them questions.
Yeah.
And that, tell me more about that.
Yeah. So, I think training, and coaching, mentoring, all these things are different. So, training is what you do to animals. I think, I'm not sure we should be doing it necessarily unless it's technical skill sets for people.
Yeah.
But I think coaching is great, and I think that I'll go as far as saying actually that peer anything works, peer recognition, peer challenge, peer coaching. Mm-hmm. And I think in organizations, and you'll know more about it than me, that I think in organizations there's not enough peer coaching. You often get a senior who may, involve themselves in coaching, but to have a team of people who can coach each other is amazing, is incredibly powerful. So I think that, I think coaching is not about giving people new skill sets. It's about them understanding the skill sets they've already got, understanding who they are and how they may realize more of their potential. So, it's not necessarily about giving people the right answer. It's more about asking the right questions. And recognizing, allowing them to recognize some of the things that they're doing well. I sometimes say to people, if I'm working with a leadership team, for example, and I'll say to the leadership team, remember the last time, 10, 15 people in front of me, so when was the last time that any of you came out of a meeting and one of the peers, one of the people in this room stopped you before you went to your next meeting and then grabbed you by the arm and said, before you go, can I just say, I like being in these type of meetings with you, because when this sort of conversation happens in them, you do these 3 things which are really good. And I guarantee you now that in sort of any organization, very rarely, if any, does someone say, oh yeah, we do that. Maybe a handful of times in all the years I've been doing this. But how powerful would it be for a peer to say, before you go off, can I just say that you handle this bit much better than me, and I'll tell you why you do. Incredible. So, that gift of self-awareness, I sometimes think with training, we rob people of the experience of discovery. We tell people how to do stuff, we're much more so than, allow them to experientially discover for themselves a way of doing things which generates a better outcome.
Yeah, we at Action Coach for years have had the philosophy of go watch the video, but then come back and have the discussion about what did you learn? How is it going to apply? What do you want to do? Where do you want to go? And I think your term self-awareness, and you use that a lot in what you teach, is really important. How does one become more self-aware without calling you or me? Like, how do we do that on a day-to-day or a week-to-week for ourselves?
Yeah, so I think that, I think time and space is important. We're all so busy. That's the problem. We've got meetings that finish at 10 o'clock. When's your next meeting? 10 o'clock. And our job often in meetings is to get through them. I tell you, remember you probably started saying back-to-back meetings before. You thought, get these two out of the way. I can get on with some work. And we don't necessarily understand the difference between productivity and activity. And what's productive is to take time out. And it's funny because whenever I work with like business people and I say to them, how do you get more done in a day? How do you perform better? They say, give me more hours, give me extra pair of hands. I tell them that's what they say. And when I say to super performers, people perform at really high levels, like astronauts or these medical teams that do 8-hour operations, or even Premiership footballers. So how do you get more out of yourself? They say more time off, complete opposite. And realizing that recovery, realizing that taking that time out, is a really important part for self-reflection, for introspection, self-awareness, thinking about how we could have done things better or differently. And the answer is not to pedal faster. If we want to find out more about ourselves, it's about taking that time for contemplation, taking that time to deconstruct, to think about our part within things, to think about how people react and respond to how we were and what we said and did, and to close down our environment, and make it more about us, and the response that people have had to how we have been within our projects, within our work, within our team.
Now, I know that, and it's just my methodology. When I started journaling, it made me reflect on my days.
Yeah.
That self-awareness, self-reflection thing is a big part of doing that. Is there any other day-to-day techniques someone can do other than just taking time out?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting that you said about the journaling, actually, because it's proven that if you write things down, it's better than talking about them.
Yeah.
So
there's a magic when you put pen to paper. Not type, but just...
Yeah, certainly. When you if you're sort of talking to a counsellor, you would talk about all sorts of things. That's what you would do. Whereas when you write things down, you can't write as much as you would say. So therefore, you almost focus on the important bits. So, and summarize and the things which are most important. I'll write down the other bits that, I'll go off on a tangent on, I won't bother with. So, so I think that, a couple of things. We can play with our character. There's a couple of techniques on this that, many people who are successful will write lists on what they're going to do today. When was the last time we wrote a list on who we're going to be today? No, we don't. An interesting one is to have a look at your tasks and then put a character type next to each one. So I've got 3 difficult customer calls here. They're really difficult. I don't want to make them. And usually what happens is that we look at our list, and that's exactly how we think, and the conversation with ourselves ends there. I don't want to make them. Or these are going to be horrible. I have to get them out of the way. Just do it. It's going to be awful. Whereas if we write down those 3 things on our to-do list, and next to it we write open-mindedly or optimistically, and then we've got a brainstorm with our team later, enthusiastically, or quietly. I usually take over, so quietly. And so if we write down a character type next to our task list, well, we're more likely to get it done. That's scientifically proven. But we're also more likely to do it with a personality type, which gets the most out of that task. But we also get a chance to find out about ourselves. Because I couldn't sit quietly in that meeting, or what does quietly look like for me? So, as a brainstorm, I'm usually first out to say, and everyone else closes down. So what would it look like to me? And so once we start, and what do I mean by optimistically with these calls? These are dreadful calls. So if we get a chance to think about ourselves in the context of what we're writing down. Yeah. And there's a nice little technique as well called act as if. And this is a lovely technique. And act as if is to become what we are, become what we wish to be, to become it. So, and this is thinking in the present tense. That's what it is. So if I was the most, bravest person in the team, if I was. And everyone in the team knows that I'm bravest. We're using that as an example. Where would I sit in my next meeting? What questions would I ask? What would I be listening out for? What would I be saying? What would I be doing? How would I be feeling if I was? And once you start to play the role of if I was, and I've done this with golfers before, golfers who are 50th in the world. And I said to them that, where do you want to be? And they said, I want to be 5th in the world. Okay, imagine that you're it now. If you're 5th in the world now, what are you going to have for lunch today? Is it different to what you would at 50th? What are you going to practice later? Was it different to what you would have practiced at 50th? And I guarantee you now, they'll change loads of things, and not one of them they would not be able to make at 50th in the world.
Yeah.
Simple things like, do you know what? I was going to drink alcohol tonight, but if I was 5th best golfer in the world, I'd drink water tonight because I want to win and become number one. And, there's always that, once we imagine that we are it now, and what would it look like and how would we be, you can almost grow into it.
Yeah. I know for business-wise, and even for us at ActionCOACH, we reset our goals from hundreds of millions to billions. And we realized that we went from great to actually shite.
Right.
Because if you're comparing yourself to other companies at hundreds of millions, we're great.
Yeah.
But if we're comparing ourselves to companies that are at billions, we're not there yet. So we have to every day use that technique of, well, hang on, would a $1 billion company
100%.
make this decision? No, a $1 billion company wouldn't go left, they'd go right.
Yeah.
It works in sport, it works in business. If we were that, what decision? And it's funny, really. I mean, again, let's go back to golf. I've worked with some golfers. I want to be bolder. Yeah, and I want to be braver and more aggressive.
Who wanted to be bolder and brave?
Well, I shall see if I can tell you. So I think that's. I think David Howell mentioned it.
Yeah.
Right in saying that that want to be brave, more aggressive, attack the pin more. No, the best way to do it is to play with 2 balls in your practice round, and play the shot you would have played. And if you were the bravest golfer on this golf course, what shot would you have played? Which was different to that. And so again, that comparison with how they are and what it would look like if they were different.
Yeah, you mentioned Phil earlier. Phil attacked.
Yeah, absolutely.
Every time.
Yeah. So and that was his brand. And do you know what? It's funny because we talked about self-expression. That's who he was. And Ian Botham played cricket like he had his Friday nights out. And it was swashbuckling. It was charismatic. And Steve Waugh, analytical, methodical, tactical. And thinking cricketer. So. I think that once we do something which is close to who we are, I think we have the best chance, of becoming rounded, in the way in which we approach our tasks.
Jamil, ambition going to achievement. Let's relate that from good to great type thing, because we've got ambition, we're doing good. How do we transition that to amazing to great?
Well, I always say the best way to remain number one is to imagine you're number 2. So I think we struggle often with what I call the curse of incumbency. People are really successful, it's really working, so let's maintain it. But if better never stops, then we should be looking to continually improve. And I think that experimentation is key.
Yeah.
So a good example of this is Tiger Woods. So Tiger Woods, deconstructed his swing, and then reconstructed it when he was number 1 in the world. So how many organizations, how many business owners, how many entrepreneurs will have a good thing going in the present and then realize they need to give it up to be successful in the future?
Yeah.
It's counterintuitive, isn't it? That,
if it's not broke, don't break.
That's right. And I always say, if it ain't broke, break it. Let's, because we need to constantly reinvent and reimagine.
What's the difference between, you look at whether it's the F1 guys you worked with or the individuals in the golfing arena, what's the difference between one who wins one major and one who just continuously can win majors?
Yeah.
What's the distinction in their brain, or how do they think different.
There is a distinction. Yeah, I know so many people on the European tour who won one tournament, and you think that would open up the floodgates, and it doesn't. That's the one they win, and then they lose their card, soon after. That's the end of their career. And it feels like a monkey off the back. I've done it. Wipe my brow, and I've done that. So I think that if you look at people who do very well over a long period of time, they're purposeful. Now, objectives and targets are very useful. They make you successful. Purpose is different. Purpose is a reason for being. It's a reason to get out of bed in the morning. And in my experience, the people with purpose are the ones who have the careers that you just talked about, of continued success. So now here's the thing, is that purpose is never achieved. It's attained on a daily basis. So many people think, I'm purposeful. I want to win the tournament. I want to, get the business to however much.
Yeah.
But that's not purpose.
That's objective. It's
exactly, yeah. So, purpose is never achieved. It's attained on a daily basis.
Who was the best that you ever worked with on purpose?
Well, this is exactly why Tiger Woods keeps working. It's why Warren Buffett keeps working. It's why bradsugars keeps working. Because it's achieved on a daily basis. And the best that I found with being purposeful, the best I found was Darren Clark. Actually, was incredibly purposeful. Yeah, he was. He had some real challenges in his career and personal life, but one major tournament's late in his career, because of his ambition to make the most of his talent that he had at that time. So he would play fully. So I think that Darren Clark was incredibly purposeful, and I think that sometimes you don't necessarily see that, but I think he was. I think Teddy Sheringham, a great love of the game, and a love of scoring goals, a love of, being in the right position at the right time, incredibly purposeful.
How did you, because you've helped some people find that purpose over and above performance. You've helped them find purpose. How do you do that?
Yeah, so I think
in 1 minute or less.
Yeah, tricky questions today. I think we need to peel away the layers. I think that, it's the thing about the Kaizen technique, isn't it? Asking why 5 times. I'll give you a quick example that there was, and it relates to the question you've asked me. There was a manager who was working with one of his team members, and one of the team members came up to him and said, I want more money. Usually at this point there's a fight. We can't give you more money. Why are you asking for more money? But it said the leader said to his report, he said that, why do you want it? What would you spend it on? And he said, I'd spend it on holidays. He said, I want to go away to Thailand for 3 weeks. I want to go to Australia for 3 weeks. And I want to go to Spain for a week. I want longer holidays. And I said, why? I said, well, because I invested in this company when it was growing, and I put a lot of time into it. So I missed the kids growing up, and now I relate to them better. I want to spend more time with them. I want to go on holiday for longer. And then the leader said to the guy, he said, I can't give you more money, but I can move you to headquarters, and it'll cut down your commute time by 1 hour a day. By next week, we'll give you a day a week with your children back. And he bit his hand off for it. True story. He bit his hand off for it. So can you do that? And he didn't want more money at all. He wanted more time with his children. And I think that when I start speaking to people about why they play the game, why they set up a business, and no entrepreneur, ever sets up a business because they want a shared services function. Because I want HR in the future. I'd like a group finance function. That's why I'm doing this. People start up a business for a reason for being, reason to fulfill a need. And then, success can breed a whole lot of overhead, and what part of that overhead is what we lose in regard to our purpose, our reason for being. Sometimes I think you can peel away the layers. That's why 5 times. Why do you enjoy this part of the business? Why do you feel more alive when you're doing this? And once we start to peel away the layers and start to find out the bits that, are motivating us not because of our skill set, because of who we are as human beings. I just enjoy this bit. So I like doing this bit. It's who I am. That's when we can become more purposeful.
Well, hey there, and thanks for listening. I've noticed that 78% of you are brand new, which means you haven't hit the subscribe button yet. By subscribing, you help us bring on even better guests, better quality content, and serve you better with even more podcasts. So please hit that subscribe button. It only takes a second. It makes a huge difference. If you support us, we're going to support your success and help you achieve big success together.
One of the things I've heard you say is part of your job is to help people change their mind.
Yes.
Tell me more about that and help me understand how that will take them to where they want to be.
Yeah. So I think that we need new perspectives to create new opportunities and new possibilities. So we are limited by what we believe to be true. So we've got a viewpoint, haven't we, of our customers? We've got a viewpoint of geographies that we work in, a viewpoint of the economy, viewpoint of blockchain, AI, AR. Unfortunately, we prove ourselves right even when we're wrong. So if we can challenge what we believe to be true, then we can perhaps see the same evidence through a new perspective. And that allows us to make new connections or to...
Can someone do that on their own, or do they need a coach to do that?
Well, I mean, I think that if it happens on their own, it's usually some sort of provocation that does it. So which is life-changing, and that might be not just necessarily the death of a loved one or a birth in the family. It might be a movie you watch. So, it is possible. I think coaches are great at facilitating that, creating a new perspective. It catalyzes the process. But when you think about it, it's always better to be disrupted from the inside than from the outside.
Yeah.
We all found that.
That's a deep statement, though.
Yeah, we all found that out a few years ago, didn't we?
Yeah.
So, so I think that what we need to do, is to constantly, I'll give you a technique on this, is to constantly challenge what we believe to be true. Now, there's something called gamification, and I urge all business owners to do this. And some companies do it really well. Emirates Airlines do it really well. I worked with them for a few years, and they're very good at it. And gamification is playing games.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is I'll grab 20 people from their sales team, and I'll chuck them into a room, and I'll say, from tomorrow, all the seats are given away for free. So you can't make any money by selling a seat. How are you going to make money? They'll come up with 50 new income streams, guarantee it. Someone will say, all right, then why don't we sell pilot time? It's the only airline in the world where you buy the pilot by the hour, $250 an hour. Longer you fly, the more you pay. They'll talk about doing a deal with the government at like Air India, part government owned, or sponsorship on the side of our aircraft, seen by billions of people every year. Why don't we sell sponsorship? So they'll come up with all sorts of ideas. Now, what's happening here, and I'll grab 20 people next day and I'll say, from tomorrow, you're 3 times more expensive. How are you going to sell? Or I'll say, you've got no marketing budget. What are you going to do? You've got an unlimited marketing budget and you've got 15 minutes to spend it. Here's a pen, guys. Where would you spend your money? It's unlimited on marketing. If you had 2 days to do this proposal, not 2 months, if this bit of compliance didn't exist. So by playing these games, people think divergently. They move outside of the parameters, the mental tramlines that hold them in place. So how this works for an individual, or how this works for a small team, is to do exactly that. So I'm going to call a meeting on Wednesday. It's an hour long on Wednesday, and it's 6 of my staff. If I could only invite 2 people to that meeting, which 2 would I invite? And how would I get them to tell the others what they need to know or involve them in that? If I only had 10 minutes for that meeting, not 1 hour, what would I get across in that 10 minutes? If I couldn't have a meeting and I could only do it by email, what would I do and how would I ask for input? So by playing these games, all it does is give us a little bit of insight into how we can think differently, to do differently or get differently. So, this bit, and the more creative you can be, the better. So, so I sometimes will work with bankers, and I'll say to bankers that, from tomorrow, everyone lives forever. So all human beings live forever. I said, so can we just look at this particular strategy or plan in the context of that? And someone will say things like, well, it was 25 years on this particular product, like a mortgage. But why would it be 25 years? If everyone lives forever, then how many people would retire first and educate second? And then what happens is that someone will say, because you start divergently and someone will bring it convergent, someone will say, this is a really interesting point because we're not living forever, but we are living longer. If we are living longer, and women live longer than men, so should this product be different for women? And maybe we could look at marketing this to women. So they're actually going from a really silly concept, we all live forever, to something which is now completely different to their competition in relation to what they're offering, because they started off in this really creative space.
Yeah. Final question, and I always ask this one: what's the best advice or the best quote you ever got on the subject of success?
What is the hardest question you've asked, I think, so far?
It's when you try and narrow something down to one, it is the toughest.
Do you know what? I think if I'm being personal, very personal, I think life is about timing.
Yeah.
The best advice I've ever been given is life is about timing. And I was told to invest in property aged 18. I didn't listen. I was told to practice harder. When I used to be quite good at cricket, I didn't listen. I completely reinvented my career in my mid-30s. I'm only doing this now, since I was 33, 34. And someone said to me the other day, said that, I got an 18-year-old daughter and doesn't know what she wants to do. Can you advise her? I thought, at 35, I was unemployed and I was homeless. And now I find myself doing this, and no, I can't advise her. So I think that life is about timing. You sort of get it when you get it. And I think that it's quite stress-free to realize that, the world will reveal itself to you when you are in a position to receive that.
You're on the Big Success Podcast. Hit those show notes, follow, learn, keep studying. We'll be back next week with more of your success.
You've been listening to the Big Success Podcast with the #1 business coach in the world, Brad Sugars. To learn more about how to achieve business and personal success, as well as how to level up or listen to past episodes, visit www.bradsugars.com.